Your child?
My child.
The property looked ordinary, a quiet backyard in a quiet town, but what investigators found there in June of 2020 would make headlines around the world. The man who lived there, Chad Daybell, stood outside as officers walked the perimeter. He said very little, but in reality he didn't need to, because for nearly a year, people have been asking the same question. Where were the children? 7-year-old Daybell-Vallow and 16-year-old Tylee Ryan. Both of them had just vanished. The fate of bringing them home had seemed almost impossible, as they'd gotten only vague excuses from their mother, and what came next would shock even the most seasoned investigators. By the way, this is Dark Case, and you can call me Jack. I bring you rare and unseen true crime cases, as well as other things that you may later regret knowing, with regular uploads from Monday to Friday every single week. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, make sure you join the Dark Case family now by hitting subscribe and turning all notifications on. And now for today's silly little question. If you had to give your autobiography a completely misleading title, what would it be? Let me know down in the comments. All of your support over on Patreon, as well as right here via channel memberships on YouTube, is so appreciated, and I really can't thank you all enough. But I'm going to say thank you 5 times. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you. But now, on with the video. Laurie Vallow appeared to be living the suburban dream. She was the radiant, outgoing former beauty queen, always smiling, always well dressed. To friends and family, she was a deeply devoted mother. She doted on her 3 children. There was Colby from a previous marriage, Tylee from her 3rd, and later JJ, whom she and her 4th husband Charles had adopted. By 2014, the family had settled into an affluent neighborhood in Arizona. Charles, a successful businessman, provided financially. Laurie stayed at home and made every effort to appear to be the ideal wife and mother. But there were cracks, just ones that most people didn't see. According to her son Colby, Laurie's beliefs had always been intense. She devoured religious podcasts, she believed in signs, and she was growing increasingly obsessed with end times theology, particularly around the LDS Church. Still, no one could expect where all of this could lead. In public, she played the role of the doting mother, but behind closed doors, Laurie was reading apocalyptic fiction, books written by a former gravedigger in Idaho. That author's name was Chad Daybell, and when Laurie finally met him at a religious conference in late 2018, the fuse was lit. The first time that Laurie met Chad, she was totally mesmerized. It was October of 2018, when they crossed paths at Preparing the People, which is a religious conference in St. George, Utah. The event featured speakers promoting visions of the end times, of alternative prophecy, and of spiritual preparedness. Chad, soft-spoken and unassuming, had a devoted following. He'd written a series of apocalyptic novels, loosely based on LDS beliefs, stories of righteous survivors, of heavenly visions, and of dark spirits that walked amongst the living. But Chad didn't just write fiction. He believed that he could speak directly to God, and that he had been given a mission. Laurie hung on his every word, and Chad, in turn, told her that she was a goddess, an actual immortal being, chosen to usher in the second coming. He said she had lived many past lives, and now, in this one, she was meant to help gather the 144,000 souls destined to survive the end of the world. There was instant chemistry. Within weeks, they were reportedly communicating daily. Laurie started telling friends that she was on a spiritual mission. She claimed her husband, Charles, had been possessed by a dark spirit. She said her children were obstacles to her greater purpose. But in reality, Laurie and Chad were now entangled in something far darker than prophecy. They had become completely obsessed with sorting the world into light and dark spirits. Anyone deemed dark was considered spiritually dead, and according to Chad, spiritually dead people could be removed. From the outside, Laurie still looked like the same bubbly Arizona mum, but inside her home, things had turned surreal. She was telling her teenage daughter Tylee that certain people in their lives were no longer human. She said that they were zombies, and that she, Laurie, had been chosen by God to rid the world of them. Chad claimed that he had a spiritual scale, and each person he met, he said, could be rated numerically. This was based on how close they were to light or darkness. If someone's spirit dropped below a certain point or a certain score, this meant that they were possessed, that their bodies could be inhabited by demons or other dark entities. And Laurie seemed to wholeheartedly believe this. She too started labeling people. Charles, her husband, was now Ned Schneider, a name she claimed belonged to the demon inside of him. She told friends that he was already dead, that the man that was walking around in his body wasn't actually Charles anymore. And then came the list. Laurie and Chad began tracking people around them, rating their light or dark percentage. Even her own children did not escape that list. At one point, Chad allegedly told Laurie that 16-year-old Tylee had become a zombie, that her spirit had been replaced, and that she, too, could now be removed. What started as a fringe religious belief had now transformed into a system of bizarre justification. They weren't just preparing for the end times anymore. They believed that they were purifying the world, and the first real-world consequence of that belief system was just around the corner. By early 2019, Charles Vallow knew that something was deeply wrong. Laurie had now become obsessed with Chad Daybell. She was vanishing for days at a time, claiming that she was on missions from God. She pretty much stopped sleeping altogether. She said she no longer needed food or rest because she herself was a divine being. And then one day, she told Charles that she was not Laurie anymore. She was now an eternal goddess named Living Zoe, and that he was in the way of her destiny. Charles begged for help. In January, he contacted the police and filed for divorce. He told officers that Laurie had threatened his life. He said that she believed he was possessed by a demon and needed to die. I want her to get help, he told them. She's gone. I don't know who she is anymore. Charles even tried to initiate a mental health intervention. Laurie was held for psychiatric evaluation, but she was released in less than 24 hours. In July, Charles returned to the family home to pick up JJ, and inside was Laurie and her brother Alex Cox. Just moments later, Alex called 911. He said that Charles had attacked him, that he'd pulled the trigger in self-defense, but the story didn't add up. Charles was blasted twice in the chest, and at that time, JJ was in the house and so was Tylee. However, thankfully, neither of them were hurt. But Laurie, she left the scene smiling. She took JJ to Burger King and didn't even mention the shooting to the police until hours later. Charles's final warning had gone unheard, and now the only person standing between Laurie and total devotion to Chad was gone.
And you may not know this, so, because I know you heard the shot, do you know at what point your brother had the gun? Do you know if he had it when they got in their first fight, or did he have to go get it, or do you know that at all?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
And do you remember if you ever heard your brother?
I didn't see him ever leave the room.
Okay.
So it was so fast. All that was so fast. Like him on the ground, rolling around, and I'm screaming. And
this probably happened in a couple seconds.
Yeah, I mean, it was like super fast.
And I don't know if you know this or not, does your brother normally carry a gun? Like, I carry a gun everywhere I go.
Right. Like, so, I know he's a gun person. Like, he has guns and things.
Okay.
He's good with guns.
Did you know that he had one with him?
No.
When he came over?
No, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did. Because he's very, very professional with guns.
Proficient, professional. Responsible is usually a good
Right, responsible with guns.
After Charles met his end, things moved fast. Laurie packed up the kids and left Arizona. She moved to Rexburg, Idaho. This was just minutes away from Chad Daybell's house. By late August of 2019, 16-year-old Tylee was seen for the final time. She She was photographed with JJ, Lori and Alex during a family day trip to Yellowstone, but then she just vanished. Lori claimed that she'd gone off to college early, but no records supported that. No friends ever heard from her again, and then just weeks later, JJ disappeared too. He was last seen on September the 23rd. He was playing outside the townhouse that Lori had just rented. The next day, Lori told the school that she was pulling him out of education, saying that she was going to homeschool him from now on. She never spoke of him again. When concerned relatives started asking questions, Lori gave only vague answers. First she said that Tylee was attending BYU, then she claimed that JJ was staying with a friend. Later she insisted that both children were safe and happy, but by this time, Chad's wife Tammy was also growing suspicious of everything. She reportedly told friends that Chad was growing distant and distracted, and he was now being secretive about his phone. In early October, someone wearing a mask attempted to take her out in her own driveway. Just 10 days after this attempt, Tammy was found no longer breathing in her own bed. Chad claimed that she'd coughed and passed away in her sleep, and the coroner did rule this as natural causes. But within just 2 weeks, Chad and Lori were getting married on a beach in Hawaii. She wore white, he wore a shell necklace, and not one of Lori's children was present, nor were they mentioned during the ceremony. By Thanksgiving of that year, JJ's parents had filed a missing persons report, and when police questioned Lori in Rexburg, she told them that JJ was in Arizona with a friend. That friend had no idea what she was talking about. Tammy Daybell was just 49 years old when she passed away suddenly in her sleep on October 19th, 2019. Her death was just ruled as natural causes. But to those who really knew her, this didn't really make sense. Tammy was active and healthy. She had shown no signs of illness at all. In fact, she had just completed a fun run. She taught computer classes at a local school. She was solid in both body and mind. There were no warning signs, other than her growing unease with husband, Chad. But in this case, the deeper you go, the weirder it all gets. Tammy had recently posted online about some strange events. One entry described a man in a ski mask who had aimed at her with what looked like a paintball gun in her own driveway. She said that she just laughed it off, but as we know, just weeks later, she was gone. By December of 2019, police were done asking nicely. A court ordered Lori to produce her children within 5 days. However, she simply just ignored them.
This is all you can, sir. Do you have any questions regarding that? So it is 14:39 hours on January 25th.
Do you need something?
Any questions? You have any questions for that?
So in January of 2020, police arrested her in Kauai, charging her with desertion and obstruction. Media swarmed the island. Cameras captured Lori smiling as she walked hand in hand with Chad, wearing a lei. Still though, no sign of the kids whatsoever. The question now echoed across the country. Where were JJ and Tylee? While Lori and Chad were enjoying their new life in Hawaii, another piece of the puzzle was unfolding hundreds of miles away. In Arizona, Lori's extended circle was under growing suspicion. One of those connected was her niece, Melanie Pulowski. Melanie had recently divorced Brandon Boudreaux, and their split was far from amicable. In October of 2019, Brandon was driving home when a bullet shattered the driver's side window of his Tesla. He survived, but he told police that he believed the shooter was Alex Cox, Lori's brother, the very same man who had shot and killed Charles Vallow months earlier. Weeks later in November, Melanie appeared unexpectedly at Brandon's parents' home in Utah. Body cam footage from that day shows Brandon's mother telling officers that she feared Melanie was trying to take the children. Brandon, speaking to police himself, mentioned that his attempted homicide case was now connected to 2 other murders under FBI investigation. According to courtroom documents, Brandon believed that Melanie had somehow become involved with what he called a cult led by Chad Daybell and Lori. He suspected the group was now targeting him. 2 days after that visit, Melanie returned to the home, this time with Alex Cox by her side. Police arrested her for trespassing, and it was Alex who posted her bail. Years later in 2022, Daybell-Vallow Daybell would be indicted for conspiring alongside brother Alex to put an end to Brandon. She was convicted of that charge in 2023. Just a month after the trespassing incident, the man at the centre of so many of these allegations was suddenly gone. On December 12, 2019, Alex Cox was found unresponsive in a Gilbert, Arizona home. The Maricopa County medical examiner later ruled his death as natural, saying it was caused by blood clots in the lungs, with high blood pressure and heart disease as contributing factors. For some, this timing was striking. In fact, Alex passed away just 1 day after Tammy Daybell's body was exhumed for that full autopsy. He had been a key figure in multiple investigations, including the deaths of Charles Vallow and the attempt on Brandon Boudreaux's life. Police said they initially considered his death suspicious, but ultimately they could find no foul play. Alex's family publicly stated that there was no sinister aspect to his passing. Even so, with his death, one of the most important witnesses and alleged participants in this growing web of violence and death was gone. By spring of 2020, the tide was turning. Authorities had Tammy Daybell's body exhumed. She could now have a full autopsy. They also re-interviewed Lori's friends and relatives. And, most critically, they began closing in on Chad's property in Rexburg.
Amazon transaction receipts and search history obtained by our content partner East Idaho News revealed new dates in the investigation's timeline. As you may remember, Lori's last husband Charles Vallow was shot and killed back on July 11th by her brother Alex Cox, who claimed self-defense. Then, on October 2nd, Amazon transaction record shows someone bought a wedding ring from Charles's account and had it delivered to Lori's townhome in Idaho. The next day, search history shows someone using Charles's Amazon account again, this time to look for wedding dresses. On October 19th, Chad Daybell's wife Tammy passes away of what was originally thought of as natural causes. Just 17 days later, on November 5th, Lori and Chad get married in Hawaii. Lori wearing that ring purchased on Charles's Amazon account.
Phone data revealed something chilling. On the morning of September 9th, 2019, the day after Tylee was last seen alive, Chad's backyard lit up with activity. Lori's brother, Alex Cox, had spent nearly 2 hours there. He was moving back and forth between the house and a specific spot near the tree line of the yard. Then on September the 23rd, the last known day that JJ was seen alive, Alex returned once again. This time he stayed for just 17 minutes. In June of 2020, investigators finally got a search warrant for Chad's property. They arrived early in the morning, quietly setting up a perimeter. Chad sat in his car and watched, and it really wouldn't take long for this whole thing to unravel. Within just hours, investigators uncovered a makeshift grave. Inside was a tightly wrapped black plastic bag. Within it were charred remains. These were identified as Tylee, partially incinerated and dismantled, so badly in fact that she had to be identified through her dental records. However, this garden had even more secrets just waiting to be found. Just a few yards away, beneath a patch of sod, they found JJ. His body was wrapped in plastic and was bound with duct tape. His hands were folded across his chest. Chad tried to flee the scene in his SUV, but officers intercepted him just down the road. He was arrested on the spot.
Daybell-Vallow Daybell remains behind bars in Idaho, charged with deserting her children, while her new husband, Chad Daybell, also behind bars, accused of concealing evidence. Now, one name that stands out in this affidavit is the children's uncle, Lori's brother, Alex Cox. Investigators in Idaho say they were able to trace pings from Alex Cox's cell phone, putting him for an extended period of time in Chad Daybell's backyard the day after Tylee was last seen alive in early September and the day after JJ was last seen alive in late September. And when investigators searched the property last week, they say they used Alex Cox's cell phone pings to find the location where the bodies were ultimately found.
The human remains found on Chad Daybell's property are officially identified as the missing kids. The Rexburg Police Department announcing the findings earlier today following autopsies performed in Boise. The remains were found at Daybell's home in Salem Tuesday after a search warrant was issued. Authorities have not released details about the conditions of the remains. Rexburg Police, Fremont County Sheriff deputies, along with the FBI, made the discovery in Daybell's backyard.
Lori, already in custody, now faced even more charges. Her smile all but vanished, and across the world, the image of her two offspring, their bright eyes and innocent faces, was now seared into public memory. What Lori and Chad had done was no longer just a speculation. The law was finally about to catch up with them. Lori Vallow's trial began in April of 2023, nearly 4 years after her children vanished. The courtroom was packed out. Photos of the brother and sister were placed where their mother could see them. In them, they were smiling, laughing, and full of life. Prosecutors painted Lori as the architect of their deaths, that she was not driven by faith, but instead by lust, power, and obsession. They said that she used religion to justify removing every obstacle between her and Chad, her husband, her children, and Chad's own wife. The state introduced dozens of texts between Lori and Chad. Some were flirtatious, some were just bizarre, and others were downright chilling. One message sent shortly after Tylee vanished read, "She is gone, freed from the dark. Thank you for helping me." Lori's defense argued that she had simply been manipulated by Chad, that she believed her children were now being protected, that she was not in control of her actions. After 6 weeks of testimony and just 7 hours of deliberation, Daybell-Vallow and Daybell was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder of Tylee Ryan, conspiracy to commit murder of J.J.-Vallow, conspiracy to murder Tammy Daybell, and multiple counts of grand theft and obstruction. She was sentenced to multiple life terms, without the possibility of parole. And yet, Idaho was only the beginning. This story is not over yet. In 2024, Arizona formally charged Lori for the murder of Charles Vallow, the husband that she had once claimed was actually a demon named Ned. Prosecutors there weren't buying the self-defense story. Phone records, text messages, and witness testimony all showed a coordinated plan between Lori and her brother Alex. Alex Cox had conveniently passed away of natural causes in 2019, but Lori was still alive, and Arizona wanted accountability. Her extradition was swift. By early 2025, Lori Vallow once again stood trial. This time it was for her role in Charles's passing. She pleaded not guilty, but the mountain of evidence said otherwise. In June of 2025, Lori was convicted once again. She got another life sentence, which was just stacked on top of the others. As of today, Lori Vallow and Daybell will never see freedom again. She sits in prison, her once celestial mission now just reduced to cold concrete and razor wire. She'll have a lot of time to think. And if Lori thought she had it bad, at the end of May 2024, Chad Daybell was sentenced to death for the murders of his former wife and JJ and Tylee. Let me know your thoughts on this case down below. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.